I'm very excited to be with you all here because I get to deliver to you a fourth strategy. So we got 1, 2, 3, now 4 ways that we can save some taxes on capital gains. So this is kind of an interesting thing, what we're going to introduce here, the Charitable Remainder Trust. And what's really kind of a lot of fun in this area, and which is funny, I teach a class like this at Santa Clara School of Law, and I teach tax classes, and I also teach bankruptcy, and there tend to be every class kind of, or every student before taking the classes, oh, bankruptcy and tax, this is the worst. But then we get in there and I say, this is actually the best class. So this is actually the most enjoyable class you're going to take because we're going to teach you how to save money. And the best thing that we're going to do to teach you how to save money, we're going to teach you how to save money in the way that is open and transparent and completely compliant with the law, exactly the way the IRS and the Franchise Tax Board tells you how to save money. And which is really interesting is a lot of these techniques that we'll talk about, and particularly today's, the Charitable Remainder Trust, I'll actually even just share this quick thing on the screen here. Example, Charitable Remainder Trust, we can take a look right here. 26 CFR, section 1.664-1 is the IRS tells you to do this. The IRS tells you that you can do the Charitable Remainder Trust. So it's a completely recognized strategy that is approved by the IRS. So Osha, could you kindly put up the slide back again? I stole the screen share from you, but
no
I'll
problem.
jump back to this because it's an interesting technique. And like a lot of these techniques, there is some devil in the details. So what is this? This is, think of the words, Charitable Remainder Trust. So we got 3 components of this right off the bat, right in the name. And so number 1, last word, trust. So this is a trust style structure. So you've seen these with the DST and the deferred sales trust and the Delaware statutory trust. This is the same direction, but we'll see the details are going to get a little bit different. So this is a trust structure. And what we are leveraging with the trust structure here is leveraging the particular code sections regarding the trust structure and charitable giving and the way that trusts are taxed. So the Charitable Remainder Trust, and why the IRS likes it, and the IRS has a lot of law on it, is because the Charitable Remainder Trust is not the bad one. It's not a tax avoidance strategy. Tax avoidance bad. We don't do that. It's a tax deferral strategy. That the IRS says, that's okay. That's okay because a 401k, Roth IRA, traditional IRA, all of these things, that's okay because the taxes will be paid just over a long time or at the very end. They'll be paid just like Ocean slide, just like the slide that we saw. It'll be paid later. They say later is okay. The IRS says, we'll be around. We'll be there. Don't worry. We'll be able to collect it, but it will be in the future. And that's okay because the key thing is, as we all know, if we play around with a little bit of simple math, time value of money, opportunity costs, putting that bill out far into the future, if I'm not paying interest on it, particularly with rates now, that's fine. If there's no problem, pay it later. So that's what the Charitable Remainder Trust does. So let's kind of break down this Charitable Remainder Trust a little bit more with a story. Actually, I had to go into my son's kindergarten class, and they had to tell what job you do. And I thought, oh man, tax lawyer is like the worst job for like small children, because the person I followed was a dentist, which was great because they had all kinds of tools and like free toothbrushes. It's like, oh no, I have to follow that person. But you can make it fun because it's just stories. The law is just stories. All of these things are stories. And if you like stories, you say, okay, I want to be more like Ocean's case and not like Fred's case. Ocean's case was good. The IRS said good. Fred's case, they said bad. So I want to follow that story. So here's a story, and this is a real case that I had where we used the Charitable Remainder Trust to solve a problem. So what does the problem usually happen for clients where they start looking at Charitable Remainder Trust? Usually the problem is a capital gains tax problem. Not usually though there are some exceptions, but not usually an ordinary income problem. It's usually not an ordinary income problem. It's usually that client says, I have this asset. It has a lot of built-in capital gain. So if I sell it, I just drop sell it, I'm going to have a lot of capital gains tax because I will have in one single moment the liquidation of the property and the recognition of all of that income. And classically, it tends to be on assets where where it's particularly acute. Generally not, let's say, a primary residence, because Section 121 of the code, I have my 250,000 individual. If I'm married, it's up to 500,000. I have ways to kind of deal with that recognition of capital gains income. This is usually something that's off to the side, classically like an investment real estate piece of property. This one's just classic. Or maybe like founder's stock or something like that. Again, it's a capital asset, but the classic ones are founder's stock, or, you know, NVIDIA. If you bought NVIDIA a couple of years ago, maybe you have that. I had a terrible case actually 2 weeks ago of someone who passed away that had that stock and had they passed away before it went up, and then the family still had it. It became kind of a mess. But this is a technique that's used when you have an asset that has a lot of built-in capital gains. So a classic one where this happens is I have a piece of real estate, and we say, oh, okay, you know, what is it? It's a rental house, or it's a duplex or something like that. And I say, yeah, I don't really like having this. You know, it's in XYZ city. You know, the town's kind of not so great. I'm not getting good rents. I have a lot. I frequently have problem tenants with that. I can't get a good tenant because, you know, it's not in a great area. You know, I'm having a lot of problems with it. It's also an old house. It's taking, you know, a lot of problems. I want to sell this. So we start talking to the tax professional client, and they say, okay, I want to sell it. And we start hearing from the accountant that we say, wow, there's a lot of capital gains tax. You know, they'll always ask like, well, what's your basis in the property? And then we say, oh, well, you know, I bought it for, you know, 300, or I bought it for 500, whatever. But then be careful of this, because this often increases your capital gains. Depreciation recapture is that the accountant says, well, yeah, I know, I see you bought it for 500, but you've been depreciating this thing for 10 years. Your basis isn't 500 anymore. It's now, you know, 380 or et cetera, you know, because you've been taking depreciation. Taking all this depreciation year over year has eroded your basis. You think, the problem's even worse than I thought. If I sell this, my basis is really low and the fair market value is really high. Let us jump into a little bit of the story so I can overlay this as we look at the chart. Real case. This was kind of a disastrous estate gift case, plus but was fixed by Charitable Remainder Trust. This was a very, very kind but ill-advised grandma and grandpa, which is just like sort of my grandma and grandpa, old Cantonese family from San Francisco that wanted to do a big grand gesture at the grandson's wedding. So the grandson was getting married. So he was, you know, like me, the eldest son of the eldest son, and they were very, very happy. It was very Cantonese thinking. And grandma and grandpa at the wedding made a big deal. And they literally at the wedding signed over a 5-unit building in San Francisco, signed it over to the grandson. And it was the big gesture, the big gift to the grandson that they gave him this building, and they signed over the property. Of course, just like at any wedding, as in the classic Western wedding, when they say, you know, if anyone objects to the union of these two people, clearly I was not invited to the wedding, because if I was at the wedding and grandma and grandpa were signing over the deed to the property, I would have jumped up and said, object, don't sign over the property. That's a terrible tax strategy. It's a great emotional strategy. It's a wonderful gift, but it's a terrible tax strategy. Why? Carryover basis. Grandma and grandpa bought this thing in like 1947. They bought this thing super, super low. So they bought this 1947, it's, you know, 5-unit property. Since, you know, let's say even the 1960s, they've been depreciating basis out of this thing for something like 50 years. There's no more basis, but the thing's worth now like $5 million. And this is a problem because grandma and grandpa, by giving this gift, yes, they gave the $5 million dollars to grandson, but they gave it to him locked up in a way as real estate property. It is illiquid. So if he actually wanted the $5 million, what does he have to do? He has to sell it. A lot of people say, well, what do you mean? It's a 5-unit property. Just rent it. Oh, it's in San Francisco, and it's older than 1972, and it's 5 units. Rent control all over the place, totally governed by all rent control statutes. It's 5 units. So you're considered a professional landlord. It's not 4 units, it's 5. So you're now in that category where not only are you subject to rent control, if you want to rent it, you have to keep all of the HUD, the California, or not just California, but the federal housing authority based on statistics about race. So you have to collect all the applications. You have to collect all the applications very carefully. You have to report this to the Department of Housing. People can say that you're being discriminatory in your leasing practices and sue you. They didn't even get a lease and they can sue you. So this is not looking so good. Also, grandson and daughter and granddaughter-in-law, they actually have really, really good jobs. They're quite high income as young couple. Also, they have no kids yet because they just married. So they have no deductions. So the thought is for them, they go, luckily they did this, is check in with the accountant and say, what happens if we sell this property? And they say, well, we're at like 37, 39% federal tax, is ordinary income, but you're at, you're at the highest rates, federally. So capital gains tax is going to be 20% plus over 200,000, 3.8. So you're 23.8 plus California doesn't draw a distinction between capital gains and ordinary income. So you're probably in the 10% bracket there. So you're at like, 33.8, 34%. You're going to pay taxes and basically on the full amount of the value of the property because it's all been depreciated out. And, needless to say, losing, north of a third, of the property, saying, oh, it's 5 million, but we'll actually only get maybe 3.8 maybe from it, maybe a little bit less. That's pretty disappointing. That's kind of a major, problem, with the situation with grandma and grandpa. The other problem is that, a lot of people might say, well, just gift it back. But again, if you have a completed gift of $5 million one way, and then you gift back the other way, you're not using your estate gift tax exemptions well. You're depleting that. So again, if I was there, I would have jumped up and objected and said, let's do something else. But they did what they did. So how did we deploy something to try to solve this? Because what we needed to do was say, the big problem with the kids is they said, well, maybe we'll just leave it. Maybe we'll just leave it. But financially, you're just gonna sit on $5 million, because you don't want to rent it. You're afraid to get a bad tenant in there. So what, you're just gonna board up the doors? That's not a good use of the money. We really do need to liquidate this thing. So how does the Charitable Remainder Trust work? What do you do? What can we deploy here? So with the Charitable Remainder Trust, what are we deploying is we're basically saying, how about this? I want to sell this thing, but I can't sell it just mightily selling it because I get all of the capital gains tax. I am okay with converting this thing into a stream of income. So I am okay with saying, I don't need the $5 million now, but I wouldn't mind for the remainder of my lifetime, monthly or quarterly or biannually, et cetera, receiving just a check, mailbox money, money that I just get for walking down to the mailbox. I'm okay with that. And I'm definitely okay with spreading out the income over the remainder of my wife and my life. I'm double okay with that. That's essentially what the Charitable Remainder Trust offers. So what the Charitable Remainder Trust offers is it says, okay, husband and wife, you got the gift, great. You don't really want to tell grandma and grandpa that this was a disastrous tax thing and you don't want to lose the money. How about this? What if we do this? We create the charitable remainder trust. We create that. Husband and wife, they transfer the property into the charitable remainder trust. Great. Now the charitable remainder trust is now the owner. The charitable remainder trust then sells the asset. So the charitable remainder trust sells it just on the open market, just like an ordinary sale. Critically, as we showed you the code sections there and the regulations, charitable remainder trusts do not, as the trust, pay the capital gains tax in the year of sales. They are exempt from paying in the year of sales. Instead, how is income tax paid? How income tax is paid is once you sell that multi-unit property, you say multi-unit property gone. That's gone. Now I have $5 million in cash. Now, this $5 million in cash, depending on how we design the charitable remainder trust, if we choose a term of years or we choose lifetime of the grantors, it will pay essentially like a private annuity back to us. So essentially monthly, or let's say annually, it'll pay $150,000, $150,000, $150,000, $150,000 annually. Once I receive that check, there's going to be in that check, there's going to be part of it is going to be ordinary income. So on the 5 million, if there was any short-term capital gains on that or interest, let's say nowadays it earned interest on that little sliver, I'll pay ordinary income on that. On the remaining part, the fraction that was capital gains from the sales transaction from the 5 million, that will be paid as capital gains tax. And then if there's any that was principal, let's say if there was basis, of the 5 million, if $1 million was basis, and then the remaining 4 million was gain, there'd be a fraction of basis that's not taxed at all. And essentially, this would flow year over year over year. So instead of paying capital gains taxes all on the 5 million all at once, instead I'm paying annually, fractionally, spread over many, many years, potentially the length of my and my wife's lifetime, a good long time. It gets a little bit better. So you say, okay, that's pretty good. That's, I don't know, you look at the DST or the deferred sales trust, you say, I don't know, maybe those seem a little bit better. You say, yeah, they are. They're in play. The question is, do you maybe need this from the charitable remainder trust? The charitable remainder trust is also helpful in that it will generate a charitable deduction in year one that you can carry forward as far as 5 years. So for this gift, this, let's say $5 million gift to the charitable remainder trust, essentially a calculation is done where we take the $5 million, we subtract out the value of that annuity, because we'll say husband and wife will get the value of this annuity, but at least 10% of this, the value, at least $500,000, has to go to the charity at the end of the term. So we have to have at least that. So we'll get at least a charitable deduction of maybe 10%, usually it's between 14 and 8%, depends how you run the calculations to create this annuity. So this can be very good if in that year you also want to shield ordinary income. So like this couple, they thought, hey, Mike, this thing sounds pretty good. We get to sell the property, good. We need to sell it because we don't want to have this property. It's really troublesome, good. So we get liquidity. We defer the taxes because, we're going to have to pay the taxes. Somebody's going to have to pay the taxes. Would have been better Grandma and Grandpa just kept it and then passed it through their revocable living trust and cleared all of the taxes, but they didn't do that, so that ship has sailed. So we'll just live with deferring the taxes and paying it over time. And actually what we'll do, because they're a young couple, is say, actually, husband and wife, we kind of want to have kids. So maybe my wife will go on leave. She won't be earning a few years, or she'll go more part-time and we'll alternate. We don't need to be a 2-income household anymore. because now we're getting this income, we're getting mailbox money. So actually both of us working plus mailbox money, maybe we don't need to do that because we're increasing our tax bracketing actually with that. So maybe she'll go on maternity leave, we'll take care of the kids. Maybe she'll go back to work, I'll go off, but we can now become essentially a one working household and use that stream of income. So this is all looking pretty good. We're liking all of this. We can convert the capital asset to a stream of income. We can defer the taxes over a long period of time. We get a 10%-ish charitable deduction in year one. Say, hey, this sounds great. This is really, really good. How can I lose? How can I lose with the Charitable Remainder Trust? There is a catch. The remainder part. Trust word is fine. Charity is fine. Remainder is a problem. The Charitable Remainder Trust is a box with a trap door. And this door can open and your asset drops out. And what do I mean by this asset drops out? Let's say I create this. I'm a single person. I'm not married. Married makes this much safer. But I'm a single person. I do all this. I think, man, this is a fantastic thing. I'm so happy. I sign all the documents, at the lawyer's office. We do the transfer. We record this. And I'm just, loving life. And say, I'm going to, go down to the mailbox and, get my check. And as I go down to get the mailbox, alas, a runaway mail truck goes out of control, hits me and kills me. I pass away. Remainder. As soon as I die, boom, the trapdoor opens and whatever's left in that Charitable Remainder Trust drops down to the charity. It does not go to my kids. It goes to the charity. So one of the key design features is I have to outlive the term of the Charitable Remainder Trust. So if I designed it for my lifetime, I need to live a good long life. How could I game this better? Husband and wife community property trust. I now have 2 lives. Odds there. And then my wife and I just don't fly together anymore, I guess. But we have to ameliorate this risk by designing the trust in a safer way. In addition to this, what we want to do, and like this 2 clients were really perfect for this, young couple. What do we do? What's the standard answer of what do we do to ameliorate risk financially should something bad happen, I suddenly pass away? What's always the answer to this? The answer is always life insurance. You insure against risk. The same way, what's the situation if I drive my car and someone hits my car? I buy automobile insurance. My house, what do I do in case the house catches on fire? Casualty insurance. We carry insurance. So that's how casualty risk insurance is how we protect against risks. So one of the risks that's inherent in this is I pass away. So what we do is this seeking down on the right side of the chart, this step 6, purchase life insurance with an irrevocable life insurance trust. You always want to do it that way when you're buying good quality long-term life insurance that's of a significant value, that's my replacement asset. And when we get all of this working together and it's all set up, what should be happening and what does happen is that this San Francisco real estate gets converted to cash. That is now cash. There's no capital gains tax paid in that year 1. Then this is flowing the income back to me over many, many years, my lifetime or 20 years. Again, because I didn't have to pay that 33 some odd % to the IRS in year 1, that third is still in the trust and it's invested. So that third is making money. I'm only depleting the trust based on, the 1/20th or whatever the calculation was for my lifetime. That's making money. This is flowing back to me. I do have to create a calculation where at least 10%, at least 500,000 ends up with the charity, but that's okay because when we calculate it out, we generally will end up over the span of my lifetime receiving more than $5 million plus the time value of money. Basically, we're just throwing that 10%. We're happy to give the charity that money. So we'll, providing my wife and I, we outlive the term and nothing surprising happens, we will reap the benefits of this CRT. And because we have the irrevocable life insurance trust, assuming everything's going well, we will now also, not only during our lifetime, have enjoyed and depleted out all of that $5 million plus the time value of money from that. We'll also end up with the kids, they'll also have the life insurance policy. And that life insurance policy in the irrevocable trust is not estate taxable to my estate. So as I'm growing wealth, I've actually now enabled myself to avoid outside risk of something happening to me, and I've been able to slide that asset around the estate tax. So this is pretty good. Also, with these streams of income, charitable remainder trust and the irrevocable life insurance trust are quite asset protected, especially the irrevocable life insurance trust. So we've done very, very well. Some clients say, well, Mike, I'm still a little bit worried about this charity thing. I hear a lot of crooked, funny business about charities. I don't know. There's only, not so many, that I trust. I'm worried about it. Well, if you want to go all the way with this, the charity can be your own private family foundation. If you don't need such a large charitable deduction in the beginning, you're willing to forego a little bit about that. You can loop the whole thing of the charitable remainder trust, your irrevocable life insurance trust, and you say, well, if something happens to me, the charity is actually going to be the Lee Family Foundation, and that will be the charity, and private family foundations. Again, these are all charities. You can't self-deal. You can't take the money out of them or anything, but you are able to compensate for services. So if I have children, the children could eventually work for the foundation, or they could just, if something unfortunate happened to me, they want to honor my memory, it's right there. And they can control that for charitable purposes. So this can be designed in a way to have the charitable remainder trust solve the capital gains tax problem, defer the taxes there. We can ameliorate the risk. We can reduce the risk with the irrevocable life insurance trust. That also provides good asset protection. And that also provides a way to reduce and prevent exposing an asset to estate tax. And if we want to go all the way, we also can maintain family control of the charitable funds by listing the beneficiary of the charitable remainder trust as a private family foundation, putting it all the way full circle, full cycle. So it's a great little technique, and it can work very, very well for clients to change things from a full inclusion of the capital gains all at once, changing it to the stream of income, and spreading the taxes over time. Charitable remainder trust, well recognized by the IRS. It's just one of those things, though, that one does have to follow the rules on it. One can't use it to inflate basis or things like that. One can't borrow from the charitable remainder trust or use the charitable remainder trust funds, except for the parts that are dispersed annually. So there are rules to it, but it is a sharp technique, and one that when it fits the client profile, like that example that I had, gifted this asset and really got stuck, and it was an asset that one didn't want to hold for a long time, can do very well to prevent full inclusion of the capital gains all at once. So great. So that is a very fast, quick introduction to a couple of pretty big concepts, but this hits us with about 10 minutes left over for questions, etc. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have, and we can go from there.